Okay, so what we'll look at in this video is just creating a simple control that we can use as part of the rig, and looking at restricting the movement of the control so that we can't push it past 1 and -1, and it's quite an adaptable control, so we can use it for facial animation and all kinds of other things part of the rig. Okay, so first of all, what we'll do is create the border, and it's easier. You can do it with a NURBS square, but I find NURBS square keeps all the edges as separate object. So what I find a better thing to do is create it with a CV curve tool, but make sure the curve degree is linear so that you get that nice straight edges and it's all one object. Zoom into your grid, because ultimately if the control is at the origin, then a value of 1 is 1 grid unit. So ultimately just think about where you need to create your border, and in this case I'm going to create it around 4 grid units, and that way the control will always go to 1, -1, 1, -1, and the center will be 0. Okay, so we'll snap to grid, which is using the X key, and that just makes it easy to click on all 4 edges and press return. Okay, so that was very straightforward, quite easy to do. As you'll see in the outliner, the curve, let's just turn shapes off, the curve is just one object rather than the NURBS square which you have all separate objects. So it's, again, there's no confusion, you just select it and it's one object. Also what I'm going to do is create a NURBS circle, and ultimately that's going to appear in the center, so I can zero out the translation so I know that it's at the origin. Okay. Now I've created this control flat on the floor, so to speak. So I'm just going to lift it up so that it's facing forwards. I'm using the J key with rotate, and that snaps the rotations to discrete angles of 15 degrees. So it's very easy to kind of move it upwards. Otherwise, you can type the value in the channel box. So once you've done that, obviously if I go into the object mode, it's kind of upside down. So the way to cure that is modify freeze transformations for both objects, and they will reset. And then also, as you guessed, delete by type history on both objects, so that we're guaranteed that there's no extra history in there. We're back to the kind of original shape. Okay, so let's call the outer one border control, and the inner one I'll call it I'll call it, let's say it's going to be for the jaw underscore control. Okay, and ultimately what we need to do now is group these together. As you can see, the value when it gets to the edge of the border, the translate is a value of 1, -1. So that's working absolutely fine for our controls. Okay, so I'll just group them both together. Again, when you group them, you can just make sure that the group pivot is at the center of those objects. It's just something that's, you can control rather than at the origin. I guess in this case the origin is in the same place, but just to make you aware that you can create a group at the origin of your objects. So I'll call this jaw group. So obviously now I can scale the controls but they still works to the value of 1 and -1. So the group itself is absorbing all the values. Okay. Last thing, just to prep, let's restrict the translate Y, and in this case the translate Z. Okay. Actually, let's move it around so that it's translate Y and translate X. So again, you know, it's no hassle. You can just rotate both round, modify freeze transformations, modify freeze transformations. So now I know that it's on the Y and the X. For me, it doesn't really matter. It's just keeping it nicely within Y, X and Y. Okay, go to jaw control, where we've got limit information. It will always default at the rotate. So let's go to translate and restrict the translate X. -1 and 1, they're the defaults. Translate Y, -1 and 1. So we now know that that will not be able to move beyond those values. And lastly, in preparation of your control, you can lock and hide everything apart from translate X and Y, so that, you know, there's no way of accidentally rotating it. You just can't. Okay, so that's a very simple control that you can use for all aspects of facial rigging and rigging.